When my daughter used my pension for a trip, she discovered something incredible in the fridge. Dave watched Mia bounce out the door, her laughter echoing off the walls of their little house. She was starting a summer of freedom, a chance to explore the world outside their quiet Ohio neighborhood. But as she excitedly mentioned her plans to spend his hard-earned savings on a trip with her friends, his stomach nodded. 30 years at the factory, sweating, pouring his life into making sure she had more options than he ever did, only for her to joyfully shake off the sacrifices he thought they shared. His mind raced with swirling doubts. Was he simply a stepping stone for her independence? He felt heartbroken, yet torn between pride for her and disappointment in their different paths. Days turned into weeks, straining their relationship like the aging pipes beneath their old home. Each hum of the refrigerator whispered to him about time ticking away, his weighty pension dwindling in the wake of adolescent dreams. Would that safety net, painstakingly woven over decades, vanish into the carefree summer of a girl on the brink of adulthood? As he opened the fridge to fetch water one steamy evening, an unusual noise caught his attention, dull and persistent. He shifted items aside in search of the source. When he finally pried open a panel hidden in the back, a trove of dust-coated journals spilled out alongside frayed recipes written in his late mother's beautiful handwriting. The faint scent of time past wafted from them. His heartbeat quickened. With shaking hands, he flipped through the pages. Her words spoke of love, hard lessons, and resilience. He felt darkness wash over him at the thought of his mother, who had endured so much when life's injustices threatened to drown their family. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. With Mia returning home unexpectedly early due to a canceled flight, emotions churned inside him like a turbulent storm waiting to break. She stumbled into the kitchen, curiosity piqued by the strange sounds. When she caught sight of the mess, his revelation, Dave's heart raced. What would she think of these hidden chronicles? Would she see them as an anchor connecting her to an invisible weight of history? As Mia plucked a journal, the words of past struggles leaped off the page. The tales of discrimination, of perseverance during bitter, hard times, pierced the protective barrier Dave had built around his daughter. The recipes weren't just meals. They were stories, nourishment that transcended generations. How could he explain this legacy, the mix of anguish and beauty it held, while she wanted freedom more than legacy? As they stood in the kitchen, time suspended in a breath shared, Mia challenged him. The revelations she absorbed didn't just stir curiosity, they ignited a fire. An idea sparked in her eyes, tearing apart the distance between them. Could they face not just the history carved by love, but the legacies of hardship? Suddenly, the fragile structure of their relationship felt heavier, like an anchor dragging them further into the depths of uncomfortable truths. In that moment, as silence enveloped them, the hum of the refrigerator echoed like a clock ticking down to an inevitable confrontation. Could Dave muster the will to explore these hidden histories together, or would he retreat, just as he had always done, from the truths woven into their fabric? He was uncertain, but in her gaze he felt the unspoken challenge, a call to face the shadows of the past or risk losing each other to the weight of unshared burdens. As the silence hung between them, Dave's mind raced. He grappled with the essence of what they had uncovered, an entire lineage layered within those journals, chronicling every hardship and victory. Yet, could he bridge the chasm between Mia's desire for exploration and the anchor of their shared history? Mia broke the stillness, her voice firm yet questioning. Why didn't you ever tell me about any of this? This isn't just stories, Dad. This is us. She shuffled through the entries, her sophisticated eyebrows furrowing as she read of a grandmother navigating a world that constantly pushed against her resilience. Each entry revealed struggles that seemed all too familiar, the weight of which threatened to crush them both. Dave felt a tightness in his chest. He had no clear answer. Why had he kept this treasure buried? Perhaps it was simpler to let the past fade into memory rather than confront its complexities. Perhaps he thought it would protect Mia, shielding her from burdens that weren't hers to bear. But maintaining silence was a different kind of barrier, one that endangered their bond. "I guess I was trying to give you a clean slate," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "You deserve to chase your dreams without feeling shackled by our past." Mia studied him, her youthful face an enigma of concern and curiosity. "But I'm not ashamed of where we come from. I want to know. We can learn from it together. Together." The word resonated within him, dissolving the years of self-imposed isolation. Hesitation clouded his thoughts as a flickering realization emerged. Perhaps sharing these stories was the very thing that could tie them closer, not push them apart. As if sensing this shift, Mia nestled into the worn kitchen chair, tapping into a new energy that shook the air between them. What if we turned these stories into something? A project? An art piece? Something that captures our history and who we are now? For the first time, Dave didn't dismiss her idea outright. Instead, he pondered the fusion of his mother's narratives with Mia's burgeoning dreams. Could this be a venture that united them in purpose rather than division? The night stretched on as they sifted through the journals, exchanging laughter amidst heavier tales. They discovered recipes that had inspired familial traditions, lessons about resilience in the most unlikely circumstances, each a page steeped in wisdom and authenticity. But with every giggle and discovery, a gnawing concern tugged at Dave's conscience. Could he fully commit to this path? Would Mia's next leap into adulthood echo his own faded aspirations? Even as he began to feel hope flicker like a flame, doubt loomed, as fierce as ever. Then came the pivotal moment. As they immersed in the last journal, Mia glanced up, her eyes sparkling with ambition. What if we presented this, shared these stories online? Think of the people we could inspire. A wave of dread crashed upon him. The idea of exposing their intimate history felt overwhelming, exposing not just the struggles, but the failures he wished to cloak in secrecy. Yet, the vulnerability in her gaze urged him to consider it. Maybe this was the path to his own reconciliation. "Do you really want to share all of this with the world?" he questioned, the unease leaking through his voice. Mia's response was unyielding. "If it helps others understand that they're not alone in their struggles, then yeah, I think we should." The enormity of her suggestion pressed heavily on him, churning a mix of pride and fear. The weight of unaddressed fears began to shift, raising a new question deep within him. Would revealing these stories enable both him and Mia to finally let go of their burdens, or would it risk opening wounds best forgotten? As uncertainty loomed, he felt the sweeping winds of change stirring. What he hadn't anticipated was that facing the truth might just be the catalyst for their next chapter, together. In that harrowing moment between courage and fear, the hum of the refrigerator filled the void again. Beneath it all, Dave sensed a silent rebellion brewing. Would he dare to confront not just his past, but also forge a future that intertwined their dreams into a singular legacy? They stood on the precipice of revelation. The moment to make a decision was near, and as he felt the weight of those hidden stories weave into his resolve, he knew their journey was just beginning. Dave's mind raced as he processed the crossroads before them. The prospect of sharing their family's history felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, a painful churn of exhilaration and fear flooding his senses. Mia's passion ignited something within him, yet the shadows of his own insecurities threatened to snuff it out. "Maybe we should start small," he proposed, attempting to quell his rising anxiety. Before we expose everything to the world, let's refine our ideas. Let's see if there's really something here worth sharing. He felt the weight of his own hesitations in his voice, subtly testing the waters while cautiously stepping back from the precipice. Mia tilted her head, assessing him carefully. But what if it's not just about the stories, Dad? What if it's about showcasing growth? Yours and mine. Each story could be a stepping stone for both of us, she suggested thoughtfully, her youthful determination stark against his cautious demeanor. She was right, he realized. The possibility of growth was as important as the narratives themselves. Still, doubt mingled with a raw urgency in his veins. You want to share our lives, our struggles, he said, searching for the right wording. But what if people misinterpret who we are? What if they only see the failures and not how far we've come? Mia reached for his hand, her grip solid. That's the point, Dad. Showing the messiness could connect with so many people. Sharing our authentic selves may inspire others to confront their own challenges. She was steadfast, her spirit illuminating the darkness he so often clung to. Each word she spoke resonated within him, painfully familiar. He remembered how he felt when trying to follow his dreams as a young man, often finding himself at odds with his own self-doubt. Was exposing their history truly the way forward? Or would it open the floodgates to a past that stayed buried for a reason? Suddenly, inspiration struck Mia like a lightning bolt. How about we take each story and turn it into a series? We can explore one aspect at a time, like resilience or celebration. We can use video, blog posts, maybe even podcasts. He felt the corners of his mouth twitch in response to her enthusiasm. She was an echo of his younger self, vibrant and alive with possibilities. But the walls he had built to protect himself crumbled slightly as her energy filled the room. Each piece can be not just about where we've been, but where we're going to. It'll help me and you formulate our identities, she continued, her eyes sparkling with ambition. Our future can be alongside our past. A flicker of determination sparked within him. He hesitated for only a moment before he felt the beginnings of a plan take shape in his mind. They could organize their ideas, channel them into a tangible project while keeping the line blurred between vulnerability and empowerment. All right, he drew in a deep breath, as if inhaling both courage and resolve. Let's draft an outline of our first story, a segment that radiates authenticity. Eagerly, they began to brainstorm. As they transitioned into a more structured approach, Dave felt himself loosening emotionally. The endeavor transformed from an internal battle into a shared mission, developing a sense of purpose that began to overshadow his fears. But as the clock ticked forward, fading daylight filtering through the kitchen window, doubts crept back in. Would sharing this deepen their connection, or would it unearth wounds that neither was ready to confront? Masks and facades dropped as they excavated deeper into family folklore, yet the thought of revealing any remnants of despair loomed ominously over their project. The undercurrent of tension mixed with hope signified the complexity of their journey ahead. With each story polished and prepared for unveiling, Dave couldn't shake off the feeling that stepping into this new realm could alter the narrative of not just their pasts, but alter their very futures. A sudden thought pierced through his cloudy mind. What if we fail to connect? What if we aren't who we think we are? The enthusiasm they had shared felt precarious, balanced on a tightrope of unknown outcomes. At that moment, a critical decision loomed just beyond the horizon, one that could redefine both their lives. As they stood on the edge of this venture, Dave couldn't help but wonder. After so many years hidden in the shadows, was he truly ready to step into the light and risk everything for the chance to let their stories heal him and potentially inspire countless others? The next chapter awaited them, drenched in uncertainty and possibility. Would they descend into the depths of truth, or would they retreat into silence? Only time would tell. As the evening wore on, and the flickering kitchen light cast shadows around them, Dave felt a growing urgency eclipsing his previous hesitations. The outlines of their stories began to take form, yet within that excitement lay a gnawing anxiety. The possibility of failure echoed in his mind, painting a stark contrast against the canvas of hope Mia had painted with her enthusiasm. Every idea they fleshed out opened up a world of reflection, not just about the past, but about the man he had built himself into, layer after layer, both visible and obscured. He thought about his years spent in a job that had become a mere reflection of his initial ambitions, losing sight of the passion that once ignited him. The stories they crafted together were reminders of a life half-lived, brimming with unfulfilled potential. With each suggestion Mia tossed out, he felt a tightening in his chest, a mix of pride and fear. His daughter was drawing him towards the edges of his own identity, and while that was exhilarating, it forced him to confront the parts of himself he'd neglected. The scared little boy who feared judgment, and the man who had learned to cloak his insecurities behind a facade of pragmatism. "Let's focus first on resilience," Mia proposed eagerly, her voice cutting through the thick air laden with tension. "There's so much there, like the time you lost your job and how you bounced back. That's a powerful story." Dave nodded slowly, recalling the emotions that came rushing back with that memory, the jagged whispers of inadequacy, and the raw determination he had to muster to rebuild his life. Unpacking that tale would mean opening an old wound, one that hadn't quite healed. Would sharing it lead to catharsis or torment? He could feel her gaze pressing him, seeking an answer hidden within the folds of his uncertainty. True resilience is grounded in vulnerability, he reminded himself, an echo of Mia's own belief. They needed to expose those raw stories, gaps and all, to illustrate a journey rather than paint a polished portrait. Maybe the storyline should start with the day everything changed, he suggested tentatively, seeing Mia's excitement flare once more. He recognized that for every storm weathered, there was light after, and sometimes the darkness had to be acknowledged first. Still, the dread of vulnerability gripped him again. Perhaps his role both as a father and as a storyteller was to highlight not only his struggles, but also how they shaped their collective growth. As they worked, moments of laughter bubbled up, driven by fond memories intertwined with hardship. There was healing in this process, layered with the connection forged through shared history. Yet Dave sensed an enormous weight rolling into the room, a quiet dread foreshadowing the deeper histories yet to be explored. Would Mia's youthful exuberance withstand the blows they might unearth? How would she react when faced with family failures that cast long shadows over their lives? He feared that revealing too much could disrupt the delicate harmony they were crafting. His reflection was interrupted by Mia, who had begun typing out their ideas. "Dad, this is it. We're going to create something that resonates." With fervor, she turned to him. "But we need honesty. If we gloss over the bad bits, it won't feel real." That was the crux of it. Grooming their tales could lead to a shallow impact, a risk he hadn't considered until now. The more they drew closer to the essence of their experiences, the more entangled he felt in the obligation to portray not just the grand narrative, but the stark reality woven within it. Yet there they stood, perched precariously on the edge of vulnerability. As they finalized their first draft, Dave couldn't shake the heavy anticipation of unveiling these stories. Would the act of sharing truly foster growth, or would it open the door to feelings he had worked hard to suppress? The thought of taking that leap narrowed his focus. Bound by an unseen thread, they both grasped the significance of their undertaking, a journey of rediscovery crafted through the medium of raw truth. But looming wrinkles of doubt began to surface again. In that moment, the clock chimed, pulling him back to the present. What if artifacts of their past proved painful instead of liberating? This project might expose facets of himself he'd rather leave buried. And yet, somehow, it felt necessary. A rite of passage, perhaps. Exhaling slowly, he looked at Mia, her eyes glimmering with purpose. Tomorrow is going to be a big day, he murmured, a realization dawning upon him. We have to commit to this. No turning back. Mia's excited nod gave him an unexpected jolt of affirmation. Yet within that commitment echoed a powerful mantra. The gateway to growth often lay through pain. As they shared a moment of understanding, the weight of unspoken truths pressed down hard. Dave realized he stood just moments away from a transformation that could redefine both their paths. But as he sat contemplating the stories they crafted, a new fear drifted in. What awaited on the other side of this journey? Would he emerge renewed, or would he find himself haunted by shadows they unearthed? An unsettling question lingered in the air, commanding his attention. What if the stories revealed more than they bargained for? What if they discovered that not everything buried years ago should stay hidden? The sun broke through the window early the next morning, illuminating the kitchen with a warmth that felt almost promising, yet strangely intimidating. Dave stood by the coffee maker, staring into his reflection in the darkened glass. The faint shadow of a man he used to know stared back, the remnants of ambition dimmed by years of routine. Today marked their first step into an arena filled with potential. It could either elevate or expose him entirely. Mia bounded in, her infectious energy vibrant as she hugged a stack of papers tightly to her chest. "Dad, today's the day. Are you ready?" she asked, almost dancing with excitement. Her enthusiasm was contagious, yet it sparked a flicker of anxiety in him. How could he prepare himself for what lay ahead? The stories they had chosen to unravel were tangled perhaps beyond recognition, and the self-doubt he had wrestled with last night resurfaced like an unwelcome visitor. "Let's just take it step by step," he replied, forcing a smile. Inside, he grappled with the tension coiling tighter in his chest. What did it mean to share so much, especially when so much of it had the potential to hurt? They set up an improvised workspace at the kitchen table, armed with their thoughts and a few basic supplies, a truly humble beginning. As he watched Mia arrange the papers, he was reminded of the days when discovering her potential brought him such pride. Yet today, they were both stepping into unknown territory. He as a father, aiming to be transparent, and she as an eager implementer of their narrative. "What about those moments that terrified you?" she prompted suddenly, her fingertips tapping against the papers. "You know, the ones that taught you what resilience really means." Dave took a deep breath, remembering the day he lost his job. The sense of betrayal, the spiral of fear, and the awakening of a resolve that had remained dormant for too long. He had kept that story at bay, tucking it into the back of his mind. "It wasn't just losing the position," he explained slowly. "It was losing the identity tied to that role. I felt as if I had unraveled completely." That admission cracked his exterior, sending a rush of vulnerability flooding through him. He saw Mia's wide eyes as she absorbed his words, a mixture of fascination and worry knitting her brow. Would she really understand the weight of his struggle? He thought of how many times he had shielded her from such raw truth, hoping to spare her the burden of living with fear. "Tell me more," she encouraged. "What made you bounce back?" As he began to narrate the events surrounding that moment, his despair, the frantic job applications, the sleepless nights, it felt as though he were pulling the bandage off an old wound. The closer he got to the core of his experience, the more clarity found him. He recalled reaching out for support, connecting with people who had faced similar battles, sharing drinks and stories that gave him comfort. Each interaction was a lesson wrapped in camaraderie. Dave took a risk. I had to stop pretending everything was okay. It was the first step. In that truth, he felt a sense of liberation. Mia leaned in closer, her interest piqued. This transformation began not in the victorious narrative of redemption, but in the simple act of admitting he was human, flawed. As the words flowed freely between them, Dave realized this was more than just a project. This was a shared journey, a redefinition of their roles as father and daughter, a partnership rooted in trust that held the potential to heal them both. They were not writing a story for an audience. They were carving into existence a narrative that could fortify their bond. Yet, even amidst this newfound momentum, a gnawing doubt slithered back into his consciousness. What if some stories were best left untouched? What if peeling back the layers revealed not only courage, but the bitterness of regret? As hopeful as this journey seemed, he anticipated the moments that might threaten their progress. The confrontation with an old friend who knew the missteps, the potential criticism from family members who hadn't seen the growth, or even moments where Mia's optimism waned under the weight of the truths they unearthed. And just as those thoughts began to coalesce into a swirling vortex of anxiety, Mia looked up from her notes. "You know, Dad, after we finish this, we should do something with it. Like share it with others, maybe inspire someone else facing similar challenges." Her eyes sparkled at the thought of reaching beyond their immediate experiences. The prospect sent a chill down his spine, both exhilarating and excruciating. What if the stories they told resonated far beyond their kitchen table? What if they stirred winds of change for people he would never meet? He smiled weakly, feeling the weight of her ambition sliding into place alongside his fears. "Let's see how it unfolds first," he said cautiously. Perhaps today was just the beginning of discovering how deep the well of possibility ran, not just for their narrative, but for the layers of growth buried under years of silence. With a firm resolution, he faced her, ready to dive deeper than ever before. Vulnerability was beckoning him forward, a siren call he could no longer ignore. But alongside it lingered the daunting question of whether they would emerge intact. Feeling an escalating urgency, he whispered, "What if we're about to uncover things we didn't expect?" The winds of change were certainly set to blow, and only time would tell how fiercely they would whip through their lives. Dave shook off the apprehensive energy that hovered in the air, focusing on the task at hand. The enormity of their undertaking lingered like a specter, yet part of him felt strangely exhilarated despite the lingering doubt. As Mia eagerly organized their thoughts, his mind began racing with emotions he hadn't revisited in a long time. He felt the raw tension of preparation settle in him like an electric charge. "Mia, we should probably map out the main themes we want to cover," he suggested, taking a deep breath. She looked up, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. He could see the spark of ambition in her, a reflection of his own in a time he barely recognized. "Let's focus on resilience first," she proposed, flipping through the pages filled with her handwritten notes. "You mentioned losing your job, but what about moments when you showed strength amidst adversity?" As he pondered her words, a flood of memories surged through his mind. He recalled the interview that had seemed solid but turned sour, the late-night brews of anxious contemplation, and the quiet nights spiraling into frustrations. Each moment held lessons, but tethered to those lessons was an undeniable truth. He had to embrace those memories instead of hiding from them. "There were times where I had to lean on my community," he confessed, recalling how his friends had given him the courage to keep seeking out opportunities. "How did that help?" she asked, genuinely curious. "It reminded me that I wasn't alone," he continued, connecting the dots in his mind. "Those conversations led to new opportunities, new friendships that propelled my recovery. I learned the value of vulnerability, not just in my own life, but how it encourages others to drop their facades too." This realization jolted him. Wasn't vulnerability the key theme they were striving to convey? He fiddled with the papers in front of him, allowing the weight of his recent epiphany to settle. The walls he'd built were now crumbling slightly, revealing a possibility to connect not only with Mia, but with others outside their home. Feeling emboldened, he turned to her. "What if, in our writing, we included those moments of reaching out? How those exchanges ultimately expanded my inner circle and opened up new avenues?" Mia's face lit up, drawing a vivid picture of how their development could reflect cycles of dependency and growth, and how we can connect even if we don't know the outcome. Like, making friends here while going through a tough time. Their conversation flowed, revealing latent ideas. With each step they took into those territories, Dave felt the burden of the past shifting, transforming into a shared plan. This project was morphing into something beyond a simple chronicle of their trials. It was a newfound map filled with potential connections. Yet, lurking beneath the surface was a growing tension. Could they really capture the breadth of these truths without judgment? Would they be brave enough to leave everything on the table? Each revelation seemed to gnaw at him, digging deeper into the vulnerability they were both exploring. Mia's spirited energy kept his fears at bay momentarily, but she too sensed the gravity of their undertaking. "Dad, what if we wrote about how sharing our struggles helps others navigate theirs? It's like a way of saying, you're not alone." Her enthusiasm reminded him of the very lessons he had learned, but had buried beneath conventionality. As they delved deeper, thoughts spiraled around both the joys and sorrows that would pair with authenticity. "And it'll be rewarding," Mia added, her tone bursting with optimism, "to explore how people relate to their pain, and how we can lean on one another." The notion stirred something potent in Dave, a silent challenge to his long-held beliefs about emotional isolation. He never quite saw himself as a beacon. He had always relied on appearing strong. But today, their partnership suggested that vulnerability could cultivate strength instead. Yet amidst this creation process emerged a disconcerting question. Would they find themselves lost in their own narrative? The prospect of facing not just past failures, but future vulnerabilities became all too real, weighing heavily on his heart, even as he felt reassurance from their shared resilience. As he sat back, considering their next steps, a flicker of doubt began to loom larger. But what if digging deeper reveals truths we're not ready to face? He asked quietly, the question echoing the delicacies of their endeavor. It troubled him, but he knew they couldn't shy away. Mia met his glance, a contemplative expression traversing her youthful features. "Then we just keep sharing, right?" she insisted. "It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real." Real. The word resonated through him like an echo in a vast canyon. The gravity of this project, of their journey, felt more substantial than he anticipated. And through it all, he realized bravery was showing up, facing fears head-on and allowing the stories to breathe. With one final thought, a challenge loomed before them, spiraling like a tempest. "And if we discover more than we bargained for?" he considered aloud. Mia's unwavering gaze held his, and she smiled knowingly. "Then we have to try anyway," she replied firmly. Just as the determination settled in their shared space, a message chimed on David's phone. He glanced down, heart racing at the abruptness of the interruption. It was an old friend requesting to meet for coffee, someone who knew all too well the darker chapters of his life. His mind raced with possibilities. The time had come to confront his past. How would he face the very emotions he was just beginning to untangle with Mia? Yet, confronted by the notion of facing those ghosts, Dave couldn't shake one final thought. Would he emerge stronger, or would the confrontation expose the frailties he had tried so hard to hide? In that moment, he silently picked up his phone, apprehension swirling in the air of their kitchen, the dance between fear and possibility more pronounced than ever before. As Dave stared at the blinking cursor on his phone, a wave of conflicting emotions coursed through him. Curiosity battled dread. The prospect of meeting this old friend felt like both a call to action and a summons to relive burdens he'd long thought he had buried. What could Greg possibly want? Did he sense the changes Dave was attempting to embrace with Mia? And would that awareness trip him back into the shadows of despair? For a moment, he hesitated, the weight of the phone stretching in his palm. Should he keep his distance, capturing the newfound perspective he was beginning to reshape with Mia? Yet a deeper voice urged him to acknowledge that progress necessitated confrontation. Embracing vulnerability did not mean avoidance. It meant navigating the complexities head-on. "Dad, Are you okay? Mia's voice cut through his reverie, bringing clarity back to the moment. She leaned forward, eyes fixed on him, searching for the root of his silence. In her youthful insight, he felt an anchor to the here and now, a tether to the journey ahead. Just an old friend reaching out, he replied, trying to keep his tone even despite the heaviness resting on his chest. He pushed a shaky breath past his lips, turning to face her fully. I think I'll meet him. Good. Her response was instant, a burst of warmth that reminded him of his own resolve. You can't just ignore the past, right? You have to face it. Dave nodded, recognizing the wisdom in her words. He wondered if she understood how deeply entwined that past was with his future, how much he wished for it to remain neatly elided from his narrative. Yet fear had never been an effective shield, and her eagerness to embrace authenticity sparked something within him. Do you think I should share what goes down in our meeting? He asked, newfound curiosity alighting in his chest, contemplating their earlier conversations about vulnerability. The desire for the conversation to enrich their project arose with clarity. Bringing in real-life experiences could ground their explorations in something tangible. Definitely, Mia affirmed, her enthusiasm infectious. It could help illustrate everything we're writing about. The connection between your past and how you're growing now. It all fits together. He wondered how to balance the rawness of his feelings, the sorrow of lost chances, with the hope that recovery brought. This journey was not just preventative, it was transformative, pushing him into uncertain territories. Okay then, he murmured, resolving to channel this meeting into the greater context of their project. He sent a quick reply to Greg, suggesting a time to meet, and pressed the phone aside. It was time to prepare himself mentally. What had he learned these past months with Mia? The thought hung there, an encouraging weight. The exploration of vulnerability was an invitation to rewrite his story, not merely observe it. Later that evening, as shadows stretched across the room and a soft glow illuminated the kitchen, Mia returned from the store with bags rustling softly. Her excitement about their project shimmered through her movements. I got snacks for our brainstorming sessions, she declared, plopping items onto the counter. Snacks sound great, Dave smiled, reminded that small moments tethered him to joy. Glancing at the clock, he noted that their time together was both a sanctuary and a transparent window into his past. As they began organizing notes, thought patterns started to crystallize. They mapped out sections of vulnerability and resilience, fleshing out anecdotes that sparked engagement and connection. He felt emboldened by Mia's energy, nurturing distinct personal revelations. With each theme they dissected, the anxiety swelling in the back of his mind softened, replaced by burgeoning clarity. But the lingering shadow of the upcoming meeting with Greg weighed on him, casting a slight pall over his otherwise buoyant spirit. What truths resided within that encounter? Past wounds remained fresh, emotional currents threatening to drag him under if care wasn't taken. Out of seemingly nowhere, a thought jarred him, a realization of the emotional depth they would need to navigate. Mia, he began, his tone shifting, what if sharing these experiences brings up emotions I'm not ready to face? What if I feel overwhelmed? Mia paused, the brightness of her earlier enthusiasm dimming slightly, before responding thoughtfully. Then it's okay to talk about it too, Dad. The composed demeanor she displayed was striking for someone so young. The realness of it should come through the good and the bad. That's how we connect. He admired her perspective, appreciating the layers of wisdom that flowed through their collaboration. Connecting the past and present would require honesty and courage, traits he understood to be pivotal to his growth. As the night wrapped around them, he found himself considering the terrain ahead through a different lens. His dialogue with Greg could either cement the lessons he'd started learning or risk reopening unhealed scars. Against the quiet backdrop of the kitchen, he felt an echo remind him that growth wasn't always pretty. Sometimes it required a dive into the murk. Meanwhile, Mia's vibrant spirit pushed him to gear up for uncovering his truths, basking in the formidable possibility of forging stronger connections through their evolving narrative. With determination lodging itself in his heart, Dave met Mia's gaze. "Are you ready for me to go to this meeting?" "More than ready," she stated, conviction shimmering in her expression. "Then it's settled." He took a deep breath, trying to rally himself for what awaited him. Just as he felt the resolve solidifying, the thought weighed down upon him. The ghosts of his past loomed closer, and their unspoken secrets would soon dance between him and Greg. Would he maintain composure, or would the narrative unfold in ways he'd never anticipated? The clock ticked, a soft reminder that time was marching on, escalating the tide of decisions ahead. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window, spilling golden light across the cluttered table where Dave sat, grappling with a swirl of thoughts. It was the day of his meeting with Greg, a blend of anticipation and trepidation dwelling in his chest. The air felt heavier, as if charged with unspoken words and unshed tears. He replayed their last conversation in his mind, the weight of it layering complexity upon his expectations. He poured himself a cup of coffee, needing the bitter warmth to anchor him. Just the thought of confronting the past sent prickles of anxiety skittering across his skin. Yet, with Mia's encouraging words echoing in his mind, he resolved to face whatever surfaced during the meeting. Was he truly ready to dive back into those depths, confronting shadows he had long kept at bay? "Mornin', Dad!" Mia's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts, her energy radiant as she joined him at the table. She seemed unfazed by the potential storm looming ahead. Her unfaltering optimism served as both balm and challenge. Could he embody that same enthusiasm when he faced Greg? "Hey, kiddo," he replied, attempting a casual smile. "Are you ready to start our day?" "I've been thinking about our project," she said, her eyes sparkling with ideas. "Do you think we can weave in the element of forgiveness, too? It ties perfectly with vulnerability." Dave's heart warmed at her insight. "Absolutely. Forgiveness is a crucial aspect of healing. It's something I've been grappling with lately." The words hung in the air between them, a silent acknowledgement of his internal struggle. As they dove into the nuances of their project, he found solace in the shared mission, the act of crafting something meaningful together. Still, the looming meeting with Greg gnawed at him, a steadfast reminder of unresolved issues. The duality of exploring joy while carrying the weight of a past he hadn't fully reconciled felt acutely present. The clock ticked on, mocking him with its relentless pulse as he continued to strategize their project. Each tick echoed the dwindling minutes until he would confront his old friend, a friend who personified both his failures and the lessons he had fought hard to internalize. With a deep breath, he looked at Mia, whose youthful exuberance kept lighting the path he was willing to tread. "What if I end up feeling fragile?" he finally voiced, staring into his cup. "What if sharing my experience shakes me?" Mia reached out, her small hand resting firmly on his forearm. "Then, that just means you're being brave, Dad. It's okay to be vulnerable. We're writing about growth and real feelings." Her words struck him anew. It was a beautiful blend of wisdom and courage for someone so young. Her unyielding belief in him stirred something within, pushing him further along the path of self-acceptance. Later that day, standing before the mirror as he adjusted his collar, he couldn't shake the flicker of doubt tightening in his stomach. Would Greg recognize the changes he had begun to embody? Or would their meeting serve as a magnifying glass to harsh truths he sought to obscure? He needed to reconcile the man he was now with his former self, the portrait of a man who battled with regret and loss. Without warning, the reminder of regret struck him like lightning. Betrayal and abandonment swirled within the depths of his thoughts. Yet, Mia's face resurfaced, and with it came a wave of clarity. This wasn't merely about revisiting a painful past. It was about reclaiming his narrative and stitching it into something more constructive, for both him and for her. As Dave stepped onto the porch, a soft breeze wrapped around him, invigorating yet laced with a hint of anxiety. It was time to face Greg. The drive seemed endless, yet paradoxically, it felt like mere moments when he finally pulled up to the cafe where they agreed to meet. Perched near the window was Greg, seemingly unchanged. He waved, a tentative gesture that ignited a cascade of memories, laughter and heartache woven tightly together. In that moment, Dave realized he stood on the precipice of a significant emotional journey, knowing that uncovering layers of history would either shatter him or fortify him. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside the cafe, feeling the warmth envelop him like a protective cloak. As he approached the table, his pulse quickened. The choice he made today cascaded into a multitude of potential outcomes. Would he leave this meeting with newfound strength, or would he be a hollow shell, propelled by remorse? "Hey, it's been a while," Greg said, his voice a strange mix of reconciliation and hesitation. Something deep inside Dave stirred. Was it forgiveness, or just a faint tickle of anxiety? As they exchanged greetings, a question loomed larger than both of them, urging to be answered. What would truly unfold between them in this moment of reconnection? Each heartbeat echoed the gravity of the encounter, anticipation and fear locking in a dance around them. And in that fragile moment, as their eyes met, Dave couldn't escape the truth that the past was about to reshape his future in ways he could scarcely anticipate. Would he have the courage to confront the intricacies of his old friend's betrayal? Or would the past drag him down once more? Dave settled into the cafe chair, the familiar scent of coffee mingling with the anxiety swirling in his mind. Greg sat across from him, the two of them surrounded by the hum of conversations and clinking of cups. Yet they existed in a separate world, one where silence screamed louder than words. The weight of their shared history sat heavily on the table between them, a tangible entity that demanded attention. "Yeah, it's been a while," he muttered, the words barely breaking the surface of the tension that enveloped them. "Too long," Greg replied, his voice wavering slightly. "I didn't know if you'd actually come." The admission was a raw window into Greg's uncertainty, mirroring Dave's own turmoil. This was more than just a reunion. It was a reckoning. Would they navigate the choppy waters of the past, or would they find solace in the present? Dave studied Greg's expression, searching for hints of the friend he had once known, and grappling with the shadows of betrayal that lingered just out of sight. "So, how have you been?" Greg ventured, seemingly lost between hope and fear. Dave hesitated, feeling the weight of the moment pressing against him. "Better, I guess. I've been working on some things. Self-improvement stuff." It was a vague but intentional answer, a cautious opening to a conversation potentially riddled with landmines. Greg nodded, but a flicker of apprehension crossed his features. "I've done a lot of thinking, too, about us, what happened." With every word, a mixture of relief and apprehension coursed through Dave. This was the moment. The doorway of vulnerability had opened, and the shadows beckoned him to step through. He considered the years that had passed, all the unspoken truths that marred their friendship, and how each moment shaped the men they had become. "Do you remember that last trip we took?" Dave asked, attempting to break through the heaviness. He needed to ground this conversation, to anchor it in shared experiences rather than guilt. "The one where things went south?" Greg shifted, his eyes momentarily skirting Dave's gaze. "Yeah, I remember. I was horrible back then. You thought you could keep it all under control." Dave interrupted softly but firmly. The rage and disappointment resurfaced, but he steered it carefully. "You hurt a lot of people, including me. It took me a long time to come to terms with that betrayal." Greg's expression shifted to one of remorse. "I know, and I can't fully explain it. I was in a bad place, Dave. I wasn't thinking straight, and that didn't stop you from making choices that affected all of us." The emotion he had stifled rushed to the surface, tinted with the heat of longing for validation and understanding. But your words mean little without action. What are you going to do about it now? Dave studied Greg's face as silence lingered heavily between them. Part of him wanted to rail against the past, to dwell in the hurt, but the other part, the one Mia had nurtured, yearned for healing. The juxtaposition was painfully clear. Was forgiveness something he could genuinely offer, or was it merely a concept he practiced while still carrying the burdens? As thoughts churned within him, the cafe's sunlight caught the glimmer of his coffee cup. It struck him then. This was an opportunity not just for Greg, but for him as well. What if confronting the shadow of betrayal could also mean illuminating his own darkness? What if facing within meant discovering the strength to forgive, not just for Greg, but ultimately for himself? You need to understand, he continued, more resolute now. I'm not sure I can just forget what happened, but I also think that both of us have to try to move forward. Can you meet me halfway? The weight of vulnerability resonated in the very air they breathed. Greg nodded slowly, an acknowledgement laced with unguarded vulnerability as well. I'll do anything. I want to make things right. Making it right won't happen overnight. The cautionary words hung between them, but you'll have to be willing to put in the effort, to prove that you mean it. As they ventured into conversations layered with honesty, regrets began to peel away like the fading paint on their friendship. Each admission pushed them further into a territory unknown, a terrain fraught with potential for healing or deeper hurt. Could this be the pivotal moment they needed to reclaim what was lost? Yet lingering in the recesses of Dave's mind was the echo of a deeper question. Was the confrontation with Greg only the tip of the iceberg of unresolved issues waiting to resurface? He had come to face one betrayal, but what other facets of his past were still silently waiting to be tackled? The burgeoning sense of uncertainty clawed at his commitment to this journey, urging him to confront the uncharted territory, not just of their friendship, but within himself. And as the echoes of their past weaved through their conversation, one truth emerged stark and clear. The real confrontation was only just beginning. Dave perched on the edge of his seat, his heart racing as the conversation with Greg took on a life of its own. Each word woven between them was a thread unraveling years of pain, regret, and honest reflection. With every admission, the walls he had constructed began to crumble, exposing the raw underbelly of vulnerability he had long suppressed. As the cafe bustled around them, the world outside receded, leaving just the two of them bound by shared memories and reclaimed accountability. I understand if you never want to fully trust me again, Greg admitted, his voice thick with sincerity. But I want you to know that I'm committed to doing better. That acknowledgement resonated within Dave, a flicker of recognition sparkling in his chest. Could this moment signify the dawn of a new chapter for both of them? I'm not telling you it's easy, Dave replied carefully, because it won't be. But every step we take toward honesty and accountability could be a step toward healing. His mind flashed back to Mia's words, echoing in his thoughts. That vulnerability could indeed forge connections rather than shatter them. The pendulum of reckoning swung from Greg's past mistakes to their shared potential for growth. What does doing better look like for you? Dave asked, genuinely curious about the specifics of Greg's transformation. I think it starts with recognizing the impact of my actions, Greg said, a tinge of determination surfacing in his tone. I'm actively volunteering to help young men who are in situations like I was, showing them there's a better way. I want to share my story to illuminate the risks of my old habits. Impressed, Dave nodded subtly, a sense of pride blossoming for his old friend. That's a solid start. It felt oddly comforting to witness Greg's commitment to change. Yet Dave felt compelled to vocalize the burden he had borne over the years. It's scary to lay this out. Sharing truths is one thing, but facing the fears and regrets associated with them is daunting. I've been working hard to reconcile my past, Choosing to open up has made me confront issues I thought were long buried. Greg shifted uncomfortably, a glimmer of understanding flashing across his face. That's a lot to carry alone. It sounds like you've truly been on a journey. With that acknowledgement, Dave sensed a palpable shift between them. This meeting wasn't just a chance for reconciliation. It blossomed into a collective healing process, each man serving as a lighthouse to the other. With every exchanged word, they brushed against deeper truths, unraveling the essence of who they had been and who they aspired to become. "I've been trying to create a legacy for my daughter," Dave admitted, unraveling his vulnerability, one shaped by openness, honesty, and pride in our lineage rather than shame. "I want her to learn that growth often comes from facing pain head-on." Greg's eyes grew earnest. "I respect that so much. It's not easy to breathe life into those family truths. I imagine that you and Mia will accomplish something incredible together." Dave smiled, warmth flooding through him. Beneath his initial apprehension, he had begun to confront an entrenched truth. Releasing the burdens of isolation required facing discomfort. "I'm learning that burying our past doesn't protect anyone. It only harbors pain. Acknowledging it together, even in our uncertainty, can forge a foundation for healing and create something meaningful." He inhaled deeply, feeling invigorated. "I plan to share our journey through the stories we're crafting. They chronicle resilience, perseverance, and the beauty of growth. Through that process, I discovered that opening up isn't just cathartic. It connects us. It shows how intertwined our struggles are." Greg nodded, a look of admiration landing in his features. "That's the spirit of growth. All about supporting one another, right?" "Yes." The satisfaction of being understood resonated within him, and I hope it can offer healing, not just for us, but for others who may be on similar journeys. At that moment, Dave realized something profoundly important. It was about more than just confronting his past. It was about reclaiming it for himself and for Mia. As they exchanged ideas, Dave realized that this experience had prompted him to dig deeper than he anticipated, not solely for reconciliation with Greg, but as a decisive act of personal transformation. It was shifting from hurt to empowerment, from silence to connection. The conversation unfolded richly, layers of honesty revealed. Hours melted into moments, but as they prepared to leave, an unexpected statement emerged from Greg. "I've made mistakes, and I know I'll probably make more, but I want you to know that I'm locking this experience into my mind, Dave. I'm serious this time." That's all I could ever ask for. Even in imperfections, we can strive to be better, to evolve. Dave returned the gaze, which held promises of growth and renewed friendship. As they departed, a layer of weight lifted from Dave's shoulders, both in the recognition of healing the fracture in their bond and in their collective acknowledgement of the shadows they had faced. The sunlight pouring through the cafe doors fell on his face, illuminating hope he hadn't felt in years. Later that evening, back at the kitchen table, Mia excitedly awaited his return. How did it go? The sparkle in her eyes mirrored the hope blooming within him. "It went well, Mia," he replied, feeling lighter. "I confronted a lot of things I hadn't realized were still haunting me." "It's good to face the fears, right?" she stated matter-of-factly, an echo of wisdom she had handed to him throughout their project. "Yes," Dave affirmed softly. "It really is." In that small kitchen, amidst laughter and a renewed purpose, Dave forged a new path, a testament to the undeniable truth that growth springs from authenticity. They spent the evening weaving together the intricate tales of their legacy, an exchange stitched with vulnerability and courage. Moments from the past no longer weighed heavy, but became stories filled with lessons crafted through struggle. As they promised themselves to press onward, Dave knew this wasn't just a personal transformation. It was the genesis of an open legacy for Mia, a future imbued with pride and love. The journey ahead promised trials and triumphs anew, woven together in the beautiful tapestry of reconciliation and healing. The bond that had once felt strained now ebbed with renewal, their hearts resolute and their stories empowered. Together, they stood poised not just to share their narrative, but to be proud stewards of their intertwined past, purposefully navigating the future with eyes wide open, anchored in the resilience of honesty, vulnerability, and love. As his heart embraced the warmth of fulfillment, he understood completely that he was ready to move forward. He turned to Mia with a grin. "Ready to tackle the next step?" "Absolutely," she cheered, her spirit igniting the atmosphere. And in that moment of renewed purpose, enlightenment dawned upon him. He had not just reconciled with his past, he had conquered it, demonstrating a growth he never thought possible. Together with Mia, he was embarking on a journey of shared stories and profound legacies, forever transforming the course of their lives. And as they delved once more into the depths of their histories, lessons loomed, new connections formed, and the echoes of the past slowly merged into a brighter, shared future. This was their time to shine brighter than ever before, a true testament to the strength found in vulnerability, the depth of honesty, and the echoing power of embracing the truth. Now, here's something you need to do. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us thrive. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Don't wait even one more second.